Dr. Lee Nari stared at the three small creatures huddled in the corner of the observation room. They looked like tiny lions, but walked on two legs like humans. Their golden fur was dirty and matted. The smallest one kept making soft crying sounds while the other two tried to comfort it. "They are the last hope of our people," said the tall alien standing beside her. His name was Kethvar, and he was the leader of the Veltar Empire. His own golden fur was streaked with silver, and his cat-like eyes held deep sadness. "These cubs are all we have left." Nari was a scientist who studied alien life forms. She worked on the research ship called Harmony, which traveled between different worlds to learn about other species. She had studied many alien creatures, but she had never been asked to take care of alien children before. The Veltar were dying. A terrible sickness was killing their people, and they could not find a cure. The disease attacked their blood and made them weak. Most of their population was already gone. Only a few thousand Veltar remained alive in the entire galaxy. "Why, are you giving them to me?" Nari asked softly. She watched as the middle-sized cub, a female, carefully licked the smallest one's face. The largest cub, clearly male, stood guard in front of his siblings. Kethavar's ears drooped. "Our species bonds for life with the first caregiver we know as cubs. These three will follow whoever raises them until they die. We are giving you our future rulers because we trust humans. Maybe you can find a way to save us." The cubs had names. The largest was Tor-An, barely 6 months old but already showing signs of leadership. The female was Silas, quiet but intelligent. The smallest was Rekhal, who seemed afraid of everything except his siblings. Dr. Park Min-ho, Nari's research partner, pulled her aside. "Nari, do you understand what they're asking? These aren't pets, they're alien children. Royal alien children. If something happens to them, it could start a war." Nari looked back at the cubs. Rekhal had stopped crying and was now staring at her with huge golden eyes. Something in his gaze made her heart ache. "If something happens to them, their entire species dies anyway," she said. The decision was not easy. Taking care of human children was hard enough. These were aliens with different needs, different instincts, and different ways of thinking. But when Kethvar explained that the cubs had not eaten in 2 days because they missed their dead parents, Nari made up her mind. "I'll do it," she said. The next few weeks were the hardest of Nari's life. The cubs did not trust her at first. They huddled together and hissed when she came near. They refused to eat the food she offered. Tor-An would bare his small fangs if she got too close to his siblings. Nari learned by watching them. She noticed that Veltar cubs needed physical contact to feel safe. They slept in a pile, always touching each other. So she started sitting near them while they ate, letting them get used to her presence. The breakthrough came when Rekhal got sick. The little cub developed a fever and could not stop shaking. His siblings tried to keep him warm, but they were just babies themselves. Nari gently picked up Rekhal and held him against her chest. She stayed awake all night, keeping him warm and giving him medicine. When Rekhal's fever broke, he looked up at Nari and made a soft purring sound. From that moment on, he followed her everywhere. His siblings saw that she had helped their brother, and slowly they began to trust her too. The human colony ship New Sol became an unusual nursery. The cubs learned to walk around the ship's corridors. They learned basic human words mixed with their own Veltar language. Tor-An called Nari pack leader, while Silas preferred teacher. But little Rekhal started calling her Den Mother, which made the other humans smile. Nari learned about Veltar culture from the cubs' behavior. They were pack hunters by nature. They shared everything: food, warmth, protection. They never fought each other, but they would attack anything they saw as a threat to their family. The cubs also learned human ways. Nari taught them that problems could be solved with thinking, not just fighting. She showed them how humans worked together even when they were not related by blood. The cubs found this fascinating. As months passed, the cubs grew bigger and stronger. Tor-An developed the confident walk of a natural leader. Silas showed amazing intelligence, figuring out how human technology worked just by watching. Rekhal remained the smallest, but he was also the bravest, always ready to defend his new human family. Dr. Park Min-ho documented everything. He was amazed by how quickly the cubs adapted to human life while keeping their Veltar instincts. "They're becoming something new," he told Nari. "Not fully Veltar, not human, but something in between." Nari spent her days teaching the cubs and her nights researching the Veltar plague. She studied their blood samples and genetic structure. The disease was unlike anything humans had seen before. It seemed to attack the very thing that made Veltar special, their ability to bond with their pack. The cubs helped her research without knowing it. Their blood was healthy, unlike the samples from sick adult Veltar. Nari began to suspect that something about their upbringing with humans was making them immune to the disease. Other humans on the colony ship grew to love the cubs too. Engineer Oh Tae-min taught Silas how machines worked. Pilot Lee Hyun-woo showed Rekhal how to fly simple training craft. Marine Sergeant Yoon So-jung practiced combat moves with Toran. The cubs were no longer just Nari's responsibility. They had become the colony's children, loved and protected by everyone. But they remained closest to Nari, following her around and sleeping in her quarters every night. One evening, as Nari watched the cubs play with human children in the ship's recreation area, she realized something important had happened. The cubs were not just surviving away from their home world. They were thriving. They were learning to be both Veltar and something more. She did not know that their peaceful life was about to end. She did not know that soon the cubs would need every skill she had taught them. She did not know that the galaxy was about to test whether love and trust were stronger than fear and hatred. For now, she was just happy to watch 3 alien cubs play with human children, their laughter mixing together in the warm air of their new home. 18 months had passed since the cubs came to live with humans. They were no longer small and helpless. Toran now stood as tall as Nari's shoulder, his golden fur thick and healthy. Silas had grown into a graceful young female with intelligent, green eyes. Little Rekhal was still the smallest, but his muscles were strong and his reflexes were lightning fast. The cubs had learned to speak Korean mixed with their native Veltar language. They understood human customs and could use human technology, but they had not forgotten their Veltar nature. They still moved like hunters, still thought like a pack, still protected each other with fierce loyalty. Nari watched them practice combat moves with Sergeant Yoon So-jung in the ship's training room. The cubs had adapted human fighting techniques to match their natural Veltar abilities. They moved together without speaking, each one knowing exactly where the others would be. "They fight like they share one mind," So-jung told Nari after the training session. "I've never seen coordination like this, not even in elite human units." Nari nodded. She had noticed the same thing. The cubs seemed to communicate through subtle body language and scent signals that humans could barely detect. When one moved, the others automatically adjusted their positions to support them. Dr. Park Min-ho had made progress on understanding the Veltar plague. The cubs' blood samples showed they were completely immune to the disease. More interesting, their blood could actually cure infected Veltar tissue in laboratory tests. "It's like their time with humans has changed them genetically," Min-ho explained to Nari. "Their immune systems are stronger, more adaptable. If we could understand how this happened, we might be able to save the remaining Veltar." Life on the colony ship had settled into a comfortable routine. The cubs attended lessons with human children, learned about engineering and piloting, and helped with simple research tasks. They were well-loved members of the community. Everything changed on a quiet Tuesday morning. Commander Cho Dae-woo burst into Nari's laboratory, his face pale with shock. "Nari, you need to see this. We just received a distress signal from Veltar, space." In the command center, the main screen showed a recorded message. It was Kethvar, but he looked nothing like the proud leader who had brought the cubs to them. His fur was matted with blood, his eyes wild with panic. "To any who received this message," Kethvar's voice was weak and desperate. "The Krek Syndicate has attacked our homeworld. They came with overwhelming force while our people were sick and weak. They have captured our entire population. They plan to sell us as slaves throughout the galaxy." The message continued with coordinates and tactical information, but Nari stopped listening. Behind her, she heard a sound that made her blood run cold. It was a low, rumbling growl that seemed to come from deep in the earth. She turned to see the three cubs standing in the doorway. Their bodies were rigid with fury, their fangs bared, their claws extended. But this was not the mindless rage that Veltar were known for. Their eyes were clear and calculating. "Den Mother," Rekal said in a voice that was barely controlled. "Our people are in cages." Toran stepped forward, and Nari saw something in his golden eyes that had never been there before. It was the cold intelligence of a predator planning a hunt. "The Kreks think we are prey," he said slowly. "They think our people are weak because they are sick." Silas moved to stand beside her brothers, her green eyes gleaming. "They do not know that we have learned human ways. They do not know that we are no longer just Veltar." Commander Cho looked at the cubs with growing alarm. "Now wait just a minute. I understand you're upset, but the Krek Syndicate controls dozens of star systems. They have fleets that could destroy every human colony. We can't possibly mount a rescue mission." The cubs looked at each other, and Nari saw that silent communication pass between them. Then Toran turned to face the commander. "You think like prey," Toran said with deadly calm. "You count their ships and weapons and decide you cannot win. But we are not prey anymore. We are predators who have learned to think." Nari felt a chill run down her spine. She had raised these cubs, taught them human values of peace and cooperation. But now she was seeing their true Veltar nature emerge, shaped by everything they had learned from humans. "What are you suggesting?" she asked quietly. Rekal looked up at her with absolute trust. "You taught us that humans fight differently than Veltar. You taught us that thinking can defeat strength. You taught us that family is not just blood, but choice." Silas nodded. "The Kreks expect us to attack like wild animals. They expect us to be emotional and stupid, but we have learned to hunt, with human minds and Veltar hearts." Toran stepped closer to Nari. "Den Mother, you saved us when we were cubs. Now we ask you to help us save our people. But we will not fight this battle like humans or like old Veltar. We will fight like the pack you helped us become." Nari looked at the three young Veltar she had raised. They were no longer the frightened cubs who had huddled in her quarters. They had become something new, something that combined the best of both species. Commander Cho shook his head. "This is insane. Even if we could organize a rescue mission, we don't have the military strength to challenge the Krek Syndicate." Nari felt something shift inside her as she looked at her cubs. They were not asking her to send human soldiers to fight their battle. They were asking her to help them become the weapon they needed to be. "You're right, Commander," she said, slowly. "We can't fight them as humans." She looked at Toran, Silas, and Rekal. "But we don't have to fight them as humans." The cubs' eyes lit up with understanding. "We hunt them as a pack," Silas whispered. Nari nodded. "We hunt them as a pack." Over the next few hours, the cubs began to plan. They did not plan like human military officers with charts and calculations. They did not plan like traditional Veltar with simple pack tactics. They planned like something entirely new. They talked about using human technology in ways that would confuse Krek's expectations. They discussed Veltar hunting instincts that could be adapted to space warfare. They considered how to turn the Syndicate's own size and complexity against them. Nari watched her cubs become leaders. She saw the intelligence she had nurtured, combined with instincts millions of years old. She realized that she had not just raised 3 alien children. She had helped create the key to saving an entire species. But first, they would need to build a pack. And that meant finding humans, brave enough to hunt alongside predators who had learned to think like humans. Nari stood in the colony ship's main assembly hall, watching as humans and the 3 cubs worked together in ways she had never imagined possible. What had started as a desperate rescue plan was becoming something much larger. The first person to join their cause was Captain Kim Jae-sung, commander of the escort frigate Tiger's Claw. He was a former Korean military officer with 20 years of combat experience. When Nari explained what the cubs wanted to do, most people thought she was crazy. But Jae-sung watched the cubs demonstrate their coordinated fighting style and immediately understood. I've seen human special forces train for years to achieve that level of teamwork, he told Nari. These cubs have something that can't be taught. They have perfect trust. The cubs insisted they needed more than just willing humans. They needed people who could bond with them the way Veltar bonded with their pack. Using their enhanced senses, they began testing humans throughout the colony to find compatible partners. Sergeant Yoon So-jung was the first to be chosen. Toran approached her during a training session and simply said, "You understand the hunt." So-jung had grown up in a military family and had spent her life learning to fight. When Toran showed her how Veltar coordinated their attacks, she adapted her own combat style to match his movements. Within days, they were fighting together like they had trained for years. So-jung could predict Toran's actions, and he could sense when she needed support. They developed a fighting style that was part human military tactics and part Veltar pack hunting. Engineer Oh Tai-min bonded with Silas over their shared love of solving complex problems. Silas had always been fascinated by human technology, and Tai-min enjoyed explaining how machines worked. But their partnership went deeper than shared interests. Silas could sense mechanical problems that human instruments missed. Her Veltar hearing could detect tiny sounds that warned of equipment failure. Tai-min learned to trust her instincts, while she learned to understand human engineering principles. Together, they began designing new weapons and ship modifications that neither species could have created alone. Young pilot Lee Hyun-woo formed the most unlikely partnership with little Rekhal. Both were known for taking risks that made their superiors nervous. Hyun-woo was barely 21 and had a reputation for flying maneuvers that should have been impossible. Rekhal was still the smallest of the cubs, but he was also the most fearless. When they flew together, their ship seemed to move with impossible grace. Rekhal's predator instincts helped Hyun-woo anticipate enemy movements, while Hyun-woo's technical skills let Rekhal understand the limits and possibilities of human spacecraft. But the bonds forming went beyond just the primary partnerships. Dr. Kang Mi-young, the colony's psychologist, documented how the Cubs' influence was spreading throughout the human community. "It's not just individual bonding," she explained to Nari. "The Cubs are creating extended pack structures. Families are forming around the primary bonded pairs, creating loyalty networks that span the entire colony." Nari saw it happening around her. Tai-min's engineering team began working with the instinctive coordination they had learned from watching Silas. So-jung's Marines started moving in perfect formation without verbal commands. Hyun-woo's pilot squadron flew like a flock of birds, each ship anticipating the other's movements. The changes were not just tactical. Humans throughout the colony began sharing resources more freely, protecting each other's families, thinking of the group's welfare before their own personal interests. They were learning to think like a pack. Technical specialist Baek Soo-jin made the breakthrough that would make their mission possible. Working with the Cubs' natural ability to track scent trails, she developed new sensor technologies that could follow the chemical signatures left by spacecraft. "Veltar can track prey across vast distances by following scent markers," she explained to the growing group of volunteers. "We've adapted that ability to work in space. We can track Krek's ships across multiple star systems by following their engine emissions and hull metal traces." The Cubs were amazed by how quickly humans adapted their ideas. "Your people learn faster than any species we have known," Toran told Nari. "You take our instincts and make them better with your technology." Word of their mission began spreading to other human colonies. Captain Kim Jae-sung used his military contacts to quietly recruit volunteers from defense forces throughout human space. But they were selective. The Cubs tested every potential recruit, looking for people who could adapt to pack thinking. More surprising was the support they received from other alien species. The Northak, an ancient warrior race, sent secret messages offering intelligence about Krek's operations. The pacifist Elthani provided medical supplies and promised sanctuary for rescued Veltar. Even species that had never contacted humans before reached out to offer support. "Why are they helping us?" Nari asked Lieutenant Colonel Shin Dong-hyuk, who was coordinating their growing intelligence network. "Because the Krek Syndicate has been a plague on this galaxy for decades," Shin explained. They've enslaved populations from dozens of worlds. Everyone wants them stopped, but no one has been strong enough to challenge them directly. Until now, added Silas quietly. The cubs were changing as well. The stress of preparing for war was pushing their abilities to new levels. They could now coordinate not just with their bonded humans but with entire groups. During combat exercises, they demonstrated the ability to direct multiple ships with the same instinctive precision they had once used to hunt as a trio. Dr. Park Min-ho ran constant tests on their blood and brain activity. Their neural patterns are evolving, he told Nari. They're developing new connections that allow them to process multiple awareness streams simultaneously. They're becoming something beyond what normal Veltar were capable of. But the most significant change was in Nari herself. As the Cubs pack grew larger, her role evolved from caregiver to something much more complex. The Cubs still called her den mother. But now hundreds of humans looked to her for guidance and direction. She found herself making decisions that affected entire star systems. She coordinated supplies and personnel across multiple colonies. She negotiated with alien species and planned military operations. Somehow, caring for 3 alien cubs had prepared her to lead a movement that was reshaping the galaxy. The final test came when they rescued their first group of Veltar slaves from a Krex transport. The operation was flawless. Human ships appeared from multiple directions while the cubs coordinated the attack with perfect timing. The Krex crew never had a chance to send a distress signal. But the real victory came when the rescued Veltar met the cubs. The adult aliens immediately recognized something special about the 3 young ones they had given to humans. These were not just surviving cubs. They were evolved Veltar who had learned to think beyond the limitations of their species. "You have become what we always hoped to be," the eldest rescued Veltar told Toran. "You are pack leaders who can unite not just Veltar but all species who choose to hunt together." As their small fleet prepared for larger operations against the Krex Syndicate, Nari realized they were no longer just planning a rescue mission. They had become a new kind of force in the galaxy, predators who hunted with both instinct and intelligence, loyalty that crossed species lines, and the absolute determination to protect anyone they considered family. The cubs had taught humans to hunt as a pack. Now it was time to show the galaxy what that meant. The first real test of their pack hunting came at the edge of Krex space. Intelligence reports indicated a slave transport carrying 200 Veltar prisoners was moving through the outer rim sectors. The ship was heavily guarded by 4 Krex warships, each one larger and more powerful than anything in the human fleet. Nari stood on the bridge of their flagship, now called Pack Leader, watching her cubs coordinate the attack. They no longer looked like the frightened children she had taken in 2 years ago. Toran moved with the confidence of a natural commander, his golden eyes focused and calm. Silas worked at the tactical station, her green eyes tracking multiple data streams simultaneously. Rekhal stood beside the pilot, his small frame tense with controlled energy. "Traditional tactics would require us to match their firepower," explained Captain Kim Jae-sung. "We would need at least 6 ships of equal size to have a chance. Instead, we're going to hunt them." The pack had grown to include 12 ships and over 3,000 humans, plus the rescued Veltar who had joined their cause. But numbers meant nothing if they fought like a conventional fleet. Their strength lay in coordination that their enemies could not understand or predict. "Predators do not announce their presence," Toran said quietly. "They study their prey. They wait for the right moment. They strike from unexpected directions." Technical specialist Bayek Sujin had worked with the cubs to develop new sensor masking techniques. Their ships could hide in asteroid fields and nebula clouds invisible to Krex detection systems. More importantly, they had learned to track their enemies across vast distances using the chemical trail tracking methods adapted from Veltar hunting instincts. The attack began before the Krex even knew they were in danger. 3 small human ships appeared at the edge of scanner range, apparently damaged and requesting assistance. It was an old pirate trick, and the Krex fell for it completely. As 2 Krex warships moved to investigate the disabled vessels, the real attack came. From above and below, ships piloted by human Veltar teams struck with perfect coordination. targeting specific systems rather than trying to destroy the larger vessels. Pilot Lee Hyun-woo and Rek Hall led the first strike team. Their ship moved like a hunting animal, darting between the Krek's vessel's defensive fire to disable their communications array. Engineer Oh Tai-min and Silas coordinated the second team, using precisely targeted weapons to overload the transport ship's security systems. Sergeant Yoon, Sojung and Toran commanded the boarding action. Instead of the chaotic assault the Kreks expected, the human Veltar teams moved through the transport ship like ghosts. They knew exactly where to go and what to do, because Silius had studied the ship's design and found its weaknesses. The entire operation took less than 30 minutes. When it was over, 200 Veltar prisoners were free. The Kreks crews were unconscious from sleep gas, and their ships were disabled, but not destroyed. Most importantly, no distress signals had been sent. They will think it was equipment failure, explained Dr. Kang Mi-young, who had studied Krek psychology. By the time they realize what really happened, we will be gone. But the rescued Veltar brought more than just increased numbers to their cause. They carried detailed information about Krek's operations, slave camps, and military movements. Each successful rescue provided intelligence for the next operation. More importantly, the freed Veltar were amazed by what the cubs had become. Adult Veltar had always been limited by their pack instincts. They could coordinate with their immediate family group, but larger organizations confused and frightened them. The cubs had learned to extend their pack consciousness to include hundreds of individuals across multiple species. "You have done something that we believed was impossible," the former Veltar commander Velthara told Nari. "You have taught our young to think beyond the boundaries of their birth pack. They can coordinate with your humans as if they shared the same bloodline." The pack's reputation began spreading throughout the galaxy, faster than their actual movements. The Kreks called them Ghost Pack because they struck without warning and vanished before retaliation was possible. Other species called them the Hunters and began reaching out with offers of support. Lieutenant Colonel Shin Dong-hyuk coordinated their growing intelligence network. Information flowed in from dozens of sources. Other slave races who wanted the Kreks stopped. Independent traders who provided ship movements. Even some Kreks who had grown tired of their syndicate's brutal methods. "We're not just fighting a military campaign," Shin explained to Nari during one of their planning sessions. "We're leading a resistance movement that spans multiple star systems. Every successful rescue operation inspires others to join us." The Cubs adapted to their expanding role with remarkable speed. They learned to coordinate multiple simultaneous operations across different star systems. During one memorable week, they directed rescue missions at 4 different locations while maintaining the illusion that they were only operating in one sector. Their tactical abilities continued to evolve under the pressure of constant operations. Toran developed an almost supernatural ability to predict enemy movements. Sil-Is could analyze complex tactical situations and find weaknesses that human computers missed. Rekhal learned to coordinate fighter squadrons with the same instinctive precision he had once used to hunt with his siblings, but their greatest advantage was something the Kreks could not understand or counter. The pack fought with absolute trust and loyalty. Every human knew that their Veltar partners would die to protect them. Every Veltar knew that their human bondmates would never abandon them. This created a level of coordination that confused enemies who were used to dealing with mercenaries and conscripted soldiers. Dr. Park Min-ho continued studying the biological changes occurring in both species. "The humans are developing enhanced spatial awareness and improved reaction times," he reported. "The Veltar are showing increased analytical thinking and technological adaptation. Both species are evolving in response to their partnership." The breakthrough in their campaign came when they intercepted a major Kreks convoy, carrying over 1,000 Veltar slaves to the central auction markets. This was not a simple transport. It was a heavily defended fleet with escort carriers and military support. "This is different," warned Captain Kim Jae-sung. "If we attack this convoy, we're declaring open war on the entire Kreks syndicate." The Cubs looked at each other with that silent communication that still amazed the humans around them. Then Toran turned to Nari with absolute determination in his golden eyes. Den Mother, our people have been prey for too long. It is time to show the galaxy that the prey has learned to hunt. Nari looked at her cubs. No longer cubs, but the leaders of a force that had grown far beyond anything she had imagined. They had started with 3 frightened alien children and built something that was changing the balance of power in the galaxy. Then we hunt, she said. The attack on the convoy became legendary throughout known space. 50 ships moved with the coordination of a single organism, striking from 6 different directions simultaneously. The Krex fleet, designed to overwhelm any conventional opponent, found itself facing an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. Human ships provided technological superiority and tactical flexibility. Veltar instincts guided split-second timing and predator awareness. Together, they created a fighting force that was greater than the sum of its parts. When the battle was over, the Krex convoy was destroyed, and over 1,000 Veltar were free. But more importantly, the galaxy knew that the Ghost Pack was no longer hiding. They were hunting openly, and they were winning. Word reached the Krex leadership within hours. For the first time in decades, the Syndicate faced an enemy they could not buy, intimidate, or overwhelm with superior numbers. They were facing predators who had learned to think, and thinking predators were the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. Krex warlord Thekno stood in his command chamber, staring at the tactical displays showing his losses. In 6 months, the Ghost Pack had destroyed 12 convoys, freed over 5,000 slaves, and recruited dozens of alien species to their cause. His syndicate, which had dominated this sector of the galaxy for 30 years, was bleeding credits and reputation. They fight like no enemy we have faced, reported his chief tactical officer. They appear from nowhere, strike with perfect coordination, then vanish before our reinforcements arrive. Our traditional advantages mean nothing against them. Theknos was a veteran of hundreds of battles. He had built the Krex syndicate by being more ruthless and more cunning than his enemies. But this Ghost Pack was different. They did not fight for profit or territory. They fought with the dedication of parents protecting their children. Then we changed the nature of the fight, he decided. If they want to protect the weak, we will give them more than they can handle. The warlord's new strategy was brutal in its simplicity. Instead of defending his slave convoys, he would attack human colonies directly. The Ghost Pack would have to choose between continuing their rescue operations and protecting their own people. The first strike hit New Busan colony without warning. Krex raiders destroyed the orbital defenses and landed assault troops on the planet's surface. They did not try to hold territory. They simply caused as much damage as possible before withdrawing. The second attack targeted Sejong colony's mining platforms. The third hit the agricultural stations around New Seoul. Each raid was carefully planned to maximize civilian casualties and economic damage. Nari received the reports in her quarters aboard Pack Leader, watching the cubs' reaction with growing concern. The 3 Veltar she had raised stood absolutely still, their golden eyes fixed on the casualty numbers scrolling across the screen. "He is trying to make us choose," Silas said quietly. "Save our people, or save the Veltar slaves." Rekhal's small hands were clenched into fists. "He thinks we will abandon the hunt to protect our dens." Toron turned to face Nari, and she saw something in his expression that made her blood run cold. It was not anger or rage. It was the absolute calm of a predator that had decided to kill. "Den Mother," he said in a voice that was perfectly controlled. "We must show this Krex that he has made a terrible mistake. He thinks he understands pack behavior, but he knows nothing about human determination." The cubs wanted to charge straight into Krex space and destroy everything they could find. It was exactly what Theknos expected them to do. Nari spent hours talking them through the tactical situation, helping them see beyond their emotional response. "If we react with rage, we play into his strategy," she explained. "He wants us to fight like traditional Veltar, with emotion instead of intelligence. But we are more than that now." The solution came from an unexpected source. Dr. Kang Mi-young, studying Krex psychology and social structure, discovered a weakness that could be exploited. "The Krex Syndicate is not really unified," she explained to the War Council. It's a collection of independent warlords held together by profit and fear. If we can disrupt their economic system and communication networks, they will turn on each other. Nari looked at her cubs, seeing the understanding dawn in their eyes. We do not fight them like an army, she said slowly. We hunt them like a pack. The plan they developed was more complex than anything they had attempted before. Instead of striking at obvious military targets, they would split their forces and attack the syndicate's infrastructure simultaneously across multiple star systems. Commander An Ji-hoon, their strategic coordinator, worked with the Cubs to plan operations spanning 17 different systems. The visible assault would draw Krek's attention, while infiltration teams struck at communication hubs, financial centers, and supply depots. Intelligence Officer Han Ye-jin led the shadow operations. Working with small teams of human Veltar pairs, she systematically dismantled the Krek's information networks that held the syndicate together. The Cubs coordinated everything with their enhanced pack consciousness. Toran commanded the main assault forces, drawing Krek's military response to obvious targets. Silas directed the technical teams that sabotaged computer systems and financial databases. Rekal led the fastest chips and hit-and-run attacks that confused enemy movements. For the first time in their campaign, they were not just rescuing slaves or destroying convoys. They were hunting an entire civilization. The operation began at exactly the same moment across all 17 target systems. Krek's commanders found themselves fighting battles on multiple fronts, while their communication systems failed and their financial networks collapsed. Warlord Theknos realized, too late, that he was not facing a single enemy fleet, but multiple coordinated hunting groups that shared a collective intelligence. When he tried to recall his forces to defend key installations, he discovered that his subordinate warlords were no longer following his orders. The Ghost Pack has turned our own structure against us, his tactical officer reported. Without reliable communications or financial transfers, the other warlords are making independent decisions. Some are negotiating separate peace deals, others are fleeing with whatever assets they can carry. The climactic battle came when the scattered pack elements suddenly converged on Carthon Station, the Syndicate's primary stronghold. Theknos had expected this attack and prepared massive defenses. What he had not expected was the way his enemies fought. Instead of a frontal assault, the Ghost Pack used the station's own defensive systems against it. Silas had studied the station's design for months, finding ways to turn its weapons and shields into traps for its defenders. Human ships approached from predictable directions, drawing defensive fire, but Veltar-guided fighters slipped through gaps in the sensor coverage, guided by instincts that electronic systems could not detect. Toran led the boarding assault with Sergeant Yoon So-jung and a combined force of humans, and freed Veltar. They moved through the station's corridors like a pack of hunters, each team member knowing exactly where the others would be. The final confrontation came in the station's command center. Theknos faced Toran across the tactical displays that showed his empire crumbling. "You have destroyed everything I built," the Krek's warlord said with bitter admiration. "But you do not understand what you have accomplished. Without the Syndicate's control, this sector will fall into chaos. Pirates and raiders will fill the vacuum we leave behind." Toran studied the alien who had caused so much suffering. "You think like prey," he said calmly. "You believe that without predators like you, the weak cannot protect themselves. But you are wrong." Behind Toran, Silas was already working with the station's communication systems, sending messages throughout the former Krek's territory. The Ghost Pack was not just destroying the Syndicate, they were organizing its replacement. "We are not just predators," Rekal added, appearing at his brother's side. "We are pack leaders. We do not hunt to dominate. We hunt to protect." The fall of Carthon Station marked the end of the Krek Syndicate as a galactic power, but it was not the end of the Ghost Pack's mission. As word spread throughout the galaxy, other species began requesting their protection from various threats. Nari stood on the observation deck of Pack Leader, watching as her ships dispersed to patrol their new territory. The Cubs had grown into leaders capable of coordinating thousands of individuals across multiple star systems. "What have we become?" she asked Dr. Park Min-ho, who was documenting their transformation. Something new, he replied. You started by raising 3 alien children. Now you lead a force that has fundamentally changed how species interact in this galaxy. The cubs joined her at the observation window. No longer the frightened refugees she had taken in years ago. They had become apex predators who used their abilities to protect rather than dominate. The galaxy gave us to you when we were weak and helpless, Toran said. Now we return to the galaxy as guardians of the weak and helpless. But their greatest test still lay ahead. News was arriving from human space about their return, and not everyone was happy about what the Ghost Pack had become. 6 months after the fall of the Krek Syndicate, Nari stood on the bridge of Pack Leader as they approached Earth's solar system. She was no longer the quiet scientist who had left with 3 frightened alien cubs. The woman who returned commanded a fleet of 200 ships and the loyalty of over 50,000 beings from 12 different species. The cubs had grown into magnificent adults. Toran stood nearly 7 feet tall, his golden fur marked with the scars of battle, and his eyes holding the wisdom of a leader who had faced impossible odds. Silas had become the finest tactical mind in known space, her green eyes capable of tracking dozens of data streams simultaneously. Rekhal, still the smallest, had proven himself the bravest, earning the respect of warriors from every species in their pack. But the most profound change was in the relationships between species. Humans and Veltar no longer worked together. As separate allies, they had become something new. Pack bonds now connected thousands of individuals across multiple ships, creating loyalty networks that transcended biological limitations. President Choi Sung-min of the Human Colonial Council waited for them at Luna Station, but this was not a simple homecoming celebration. Intelligence reports suggested that some human leaders were nervous about the power the Ghost Pack had accumulated. They're concerned about our loyalty to human interests, explained Admiral Ryu Seok-jin during the approach briefing. Some politicians believe we've become more alien than human. Nari understood their concerns. The pack had grown far beyond anything the Colonial Council had authorized. They commanded resources equal to a medium-sized galactic government. More importantly, their primary loyalty was to each other rather than to any political entity. The first meeting took place in Luna Station's main conference room. President Choi sat across from Nari, flanked by military and political advisors. The cubs stood behind her chair, their presence both protective and intimidating. Dr. Lee, President Choi began formally. We need to discuss the future of your organization. The Colonial Council has received reports about your activities that concern us. Nari had expected this conversation. What specific concerns do you have, Mr. President? You command a military force larger than our entire colonial defense fleet, interjected Defense Minister Kim Tae-ho. You formed alliances with alien species without government approval. You've essentially created an independent state with its own foreign policy. Toran stepped forward, his golden eyes calm but alert. Are you suggesting that protecting the innocent requires government permission? The tension in the room increased immediately. Several human officials shifted uncomfortably as they faced the Veltar leader's direct gaze. The issue is accountability. President Choi said carefully. Who do you answer to? What prevents you from using your power against human interests? Silas spoke for the first time, her voice carrying the analytical precision that had made her famous throughout the galaxy. You ask the wrong questions. You should ask, who benefits from our protection? What have we accomplished that your governments could not? Admiral Ryu cleared his throat. Perhaps we should review the actual results of their campaign. He activated a holographic display showing the former Krek's territory. The Ghost Pack didn't just destroy the Syndicate. They've established peaceful governance across 47 star systems. Slavery has been eliminated. Trade routes are secure. 12 species that were on the verge of extinction are now thriving. Dr. Young Hai-in, Nari's former research partner, added her observations. The psychological changes we're seeing are unprecedented. Humans who've bonded with Veltar show enhanced cognitive abilities, improved stress resistance, and significantly, better problem-solving skills. We're documenting the emergence of a hybrid culture that combines the best aspects of both species, but not everyone was impressed by their achievements. Colonial Security Director Park Kyung-min leaned forward aggressively. That's exactly what worries us. You've changed. You're not fully human anymore. How can we trust you to prioritize human welfare? The cubs' reaction was immediate and unmistakable. Their postures shifted into hunting stance, their eyes focused on the security director with predatory intensity, but they did not move or speak. They simply waited for Nari's response. You're right, Nari said quietly. We have changed. We're not the same humans who left Earth space 2 years ago. But you're wrong about our loyalties. She stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the fleet that had followed her home. We don't fight for human interests or Veltar interests. We fight for the idea that families should be protected, that the strong should defend the weak, that species can choose to trust each other instead of fear each other. Rekhal moved to stand beside her, his compact frame radiating controlled power. Denmother taught us that family is not determined by blood or species. It is determined by choice and loyalty. President Choi studied the group before him. These were not the people he had expected to return from a simple diplomatic mission. What do you want from us? Nothing, Toran replied simply. We do not need your permission to protect innocent beings. We do not need your approval to form alliances with species that share our values. We have learned to be self-sufficient. But Nari added, we would prefer to work with you rather than around you. Earth is still home for many of our people. We have no desire for conflict with human governments. The negotiations continued for days. Human officials struggled to understand how to deal with an organization that operated beyond traditional governmental structures. The Ghost Pack was not a military force that could be commanded, or a corporation that could be regulated. They were something entirely new. Fleet Captain Song Min-jun, who had joined the pack during their campaign, tried to explain to his former superiors. You're thinking about this wrong. The pack isn't a human organization that includes aliens. It's not an alien organization that includes humans. It's something that transcends species boundaries entirely. The breakthrough came when reports arrived of pirate attacks in the Outer Rim territories. Human colonies were being raided by organized criminal fleets, and the Colonial Defense Force was stretched too thin to respond effectively. Send us, offered Silas immediately. We will hunt these raiders and protect your colonies. Defense Minister Kim hesitated. This would be a test case. If you succeed in protecting human interests without compromising your independence, it might point toward a working relationship. The cubs looked at each other with that silent communication that still amazed human observers. Then Tor-An nodded. We accept. The pirate suppression campaign lasted 3 weeks. The Ghost Pack ships moved through the Outer Rim territories like hunting wolves, tracking down raider fleets and either destroying them or convincing them to find more legitimate employment. But the most significant result was how they accomplished their mission. Instead of simply eliminating the threat, they established permanent patrol stations manned by mixed human Veltar crews. They recruited local defense forces and trained them in pack tactics. They created communication networks that would prevent future attacks. They didn't just solve the immediate problem, reported Admiral Ryu to the Colonial Council. They created a sustainable solution that makes those territories safer permanently. The final meeting between the Ghost Pack leadership and human officials took place on Earth itself, in the same conference room where the Veltar had first offered their cubs to humanity. President Choi looked tired but relieved. We've reached a decision. The Colonial Council formally recognizes the Ghost Pack as an independent organization with full diplomatic status. You will be free to operate as you see fit, with the understanding that any actions affecting human space will be coordinated through proper channels. Nari nodded acceptance, but Toran stepped forward with one final point. We appreciate your recognition, but you should understand what you are acknowledging. We are not returning to become human again. We are not becoming Veltar. We have become something new. What exactly have you become? Asked Dr. Young Hai-in, her scientific curiosity overcoming diplomatic protocol. Silas answered with the precision that had made her legendary. We are proof that evolution does not require millions of years. When species choose to trust each other completely, when they share their strengths and protect each other's weaknesses, they can become something greater than what they were separately. Rekhal added, We are predators who hunt to protect. We are pack leaders who serve those who follow us. We are family to anyone who chooses to be family to us. As the formal ceremonies concluded, Nari found herself standing again at a viewport, this time looking down at Earth. The planet that had sent out one research scientist with 3 alien children was now connected to a network that spanned dozens of star systems. Do you regret anything? Asked Dr. Park Min-ho, who had remained her closest advisor throughout their journey. Nari considered the question while watching her cubs coordinate the departure of their fleet. Ships were dispersing to patrol trade routes, establish new colonies, and respond to requests for protection from species throughout the galaxy. I regret that it took a crisis to show us what was possible, she said finally.